Dewey Finn, known for his work in the band No Vacancy and for his short time teaching rock music to children at Horace Green Prep School in New York, is easily considered one of the biggest rock icons of the 2000s. Dewey's unorthodox way of life and teaching methods led him to inspire kids at Horace Green to believe in their talent as musicians. Dewey managed to get the kids to perform together at WROK's Battle of the Bands, and while they didn't win it in the end, it was their legendary performance that won over the hearts of the kids' disapproving parents. But this success didn't come easy for Dewey. In fact, just a month prior, he was sleeping on a mattress on the floor of a tiny space at his roommate's and not paying rent, and wasn't able to get along with the rock band he'd cobbled together himself. To fully understand Dewey Finn, what led him to being one of the most iconic musicians in band history, and what happened to the School of Rock 10 years after their iconic debut performance, we need to take a deep dive into the life of one of the greatest rock legends of all time. Welcome to Band History. In this video, I'll be dissecting the rise of the face-melting group, the School of Rock, as seen in the 2003 movie directed by Richard Linklater, School of Rock. Starring Jack Black, the film tells the tale of the deluded rock musician Dewey Finn, who stumbles into a substitute teaching, or as he puts it, temping position, at a prestigious elementary school. And instead of attempting to follow the curriculum, he uses them to try to fulfill his dreams of winning the Battle of the Bands. Now, you may be familiar with the School of Rock location in your area. In 2023, there are locations in 15 countries. This company was created by record producer and filmmaker Paul Richard Green, who founded it in 1998. He was not responsible for the movie School of Rock from 2003, directed by Richard Linklater, but the company's website claims that Green's startup helped inspire the movie. The memorable performance by Jack Black most likely helped bolster the real school's reputation in return. But before I get to that, let me set the stage for music during the early 2000s. This was a time when a new wave of indie rock was taking the music scene by storm. Catchy bops like Float On by Modest Mouse and Take Me Out by Franz Ferdinand dominated FM airwaves. Soon after, new slang by the Shins and Such Great Heights by the Postal Service gained exposure in Zach Braff's directorial debut, Garden State. Bands like Arcade Fire, The Strokes, Interpol, and the Yeah Yeah Yeahs were on the rise. As this article on Yellow Brick states, the early 2000s saw a resurgence of guitar-driven music with indie bands at the forefront of this movement. The Strokes, hailing from New York City, burst onto the scene with their debut album, Is This It, in 2001. Their energetic and catchy tunes, influenced by garage rock and post-punk revival, captured the essence of the time. So where does Dewey Finn fit into all of this? His influences, based on the stickers and posters in his room, are of Sex Pistols, Nine Inch Nails, The Who, Fugazi, and Maggot. Some might say that Dewey's energy was similar to that of the early 2000s comedy rock duo Tenacious D, whose self-titled debut album released in fall of 2001. What makes Dewey Finn such an interesting musician is that he aggressively went against the grain of what was considered so cool in New York City at the time. Dewey wasn't concerned with how he was perceived necessarily, he was just someone who unconditionally and rigorously believed in classic rock's power to transcend the human experience, subvert the establishment, and stick it to the man. He hated the establishment, he even hated MTV. But before we get to the music he's known for with the kids at Horace Green Prep Elementary, we've got to rewind a little bit. Here's what we know about the early years of Dewey Finn. We know that he was in a band called Maggot Death with his roommate Ned, who played a cross-dressing, blood-sucking satanic sex god. And after years of grinding, one of Dewey's first bands that started gaining traction was the band No Vacancy. Dewey put this band together himself, and he was on guitar and backing vocals. Theo was lead vocals and also on guitar, Doug played drums, and Neil was bass and also on backing vocals. Dewey did his best to bring great, committed rock musicians together. But after working together for a while, the vibe and sound isn't exactly what Dewey was going for. Theo, Doug, and Neil were more interested in doing the butt rock thing, like Creed or Nickelback, which isn't at all what Dewey was about. Nickelback isn't exactly a band that wanted to stick it to institutions. Dewey wasn't interested in anything resembling How You Remind Me.
This is how you remind me of what I really am.
Can't say I blame him. Dewey did not know how to communicate or handle conflict very well at the time, so he ended up not being the best collaborator with the guys. He could have simply walked away from No Vacancy and found musicians who were a better fit, but he didn't. It's as if he thought there wouldn't be anyone else who wanted to play with him, and he settled for what he got, causing Dewey to try to force Theo, Doug, and Neil to fit his mold. Dewey inserted himself into the songs that weren't rehearsed. He'd frequently incorporate 20-minute guitar solos, and because Dewey seemed so desperate, it really turned off their audience. At Dewey's last live show with them, an audience member even typed on what looks like an early prototype of the Nokia Sidekick, "These guys suck." leave. And if you zoom in closer, whoever was typing this wasn't even typing a text message, he's just typing into a document on the phone. While my taste definitely lines up with Dewey more than Theo, Doug, and Neil, a 20-minute guitar solo is one of those things that can only be special if it's incredibly rare. And by the sound of it, that wasn't the case for Dewey. A well-documented rock bottom for Dewey, pun intended, and what ended up being the final straw for the other members of No Vacancy was when he did a stage dive, and instead of the audience catching him, he landed directly onto the ground, knocking him unconscious. Why didn't anyone catch him? Well, stage diving is literally a leap of faith. When a musician dives, they're placing trust into humanity's actual hands. If you haven't built that trust with the audience, taking this leap can be a dangerous practice. Take Peter Gabriel, for example. In 1971, he dove during the end of their song The Knife, landing on his foot and breaking his ankle. And he probably had a much bigger audience than No Vacancy. But if you've built trust with an audience, stage diving and crowd surfing is a transcendent experience for the crowd and the singer, like Eddie Vedder often did in the early days of Pearl Jam. Dewey shows up to practice the next day and finds out that he's been replaced by a new band member, Spider. That's right, Dewey Finn's replacement's name is Spider. No surname, just Spider.
What's up, dog?
No Vacancy had decided that they wanted to take WROK's upcoming Battle of the Bands seriously in order to land a record deal, and that meant kicking out Dewey. This was such a desperate time for Dewey Finn. He had no money for rent and no band to create music with. To try to make up rent money, he tries to sell his mint condition 1968 Gibson SG over the phone, claiming it's the same guitar that Jimi Hendrix had. Which is partially true. Jimi Hendrix did play a 1967 Gibson SG on the Dick Cavett show in 1969. You can actually buy a model of that guitar on Gibson's website for a mere $9,999. Dewey struggles to find new band members. He puts up flyers with his own face on them to audition new bandmates. This flyer showcases that Dewey is a multi-hyphenated artist because he has excellent drawing skills. But while he's stapling flyers, people make fun of him. His bad reputation has spread to everyone in town. Starting a new band would not be easy, and he was broke. So what could he possibly do next for money?
Hello, this is Ned Schneebly.
They say desperation leads to innovation. In true Dewey fashion, he pounces on the unique opportunity to work as a substitute teacher by pretending to be his roommate, Ned Schneebly. And yes, I know that Schneebly sounds like a made-up last name for a funny character that would be in a movie or something, but Schneebly is a real bona fide last name. According to FamilySearch.org, there are over 600 people registered in the Schneebly family tree. On his first day at Horace Green Prep, he marched into school full of confidence, unabashedly being himself. This confidence is what likely led the principal to not even question whether or not he was real or fake. Dewey is placed with his assigned class at Horace Green, and he quickly learns that on Tuesdays, his students have music class, during which he spies on the kids' performance of Concierto de Aranjuez by Spanish composer Joaquin Rodrigo. Written in 1939 in Paris, Concierto de Aranjuez was the first work that he wrote for guitar and orchestra. The original recorded version from 1948 was actually inducted into the Latin Grammy Hall of Fame in 2001. But Dewey didn't care about Concierto de Aranjuez. What he did care about was the fact that these kids knew instruments, specifically the guitar. Quickly seizing another opportunity, Dewey runs to his van where he has instruments on hand at all times. I guess the logic is that he'll be prepared to start a band if an extremely unlikely situation like this arises, but it seems pretty risky to me. If someone broke into his van, then he'd be even more out of luck. He learned that Zach Mooneyham can play guitar, but his parents never allowed him to touch an electric guitar. So Dewey gives him one and proceeds to riff Iron Man by Black Sabbath, Smoke on the Water by Deep Purple, and Highway to Hell by AC/DC, testing Zach's abilities with these rock classics. Dewey meets Lawrence Dooley, who can play the keys, and has him use sheet music to play Touch Me by The Doors. When Dewey was creeping on the music class, he noticed that Katie was playing a big thing, aka the cello, and hands her a bass. He puts Freddie Jones on percussion. It was at this moment that Dewey began to conduct a jam and form a new band. Dewey led them to playing the opening riffs of Deep Purple's Smoke on the Water. Why? To expose the kids to one of the most recognizable rock songs of all time. Released in 1972 on their album Machine Head, Deep Purple's Smoke on the Water was number 434 in Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Songs of All Time, number 4 in Top Guitar Magazine's Rock Riff Poll in 2004, 12 on Q Magazine's 100 Greatest Guitar Tracks Ever, and number 11 on VH1's Top 100 Hard Rock Songs in 2009. Dewey saw the potential of his new bandmates, and since he's their teacher, he saw that he could have complete authority and creative control of the band, the very thing that he lacked in No Vacancy. With this new clear path to rock and roll success for Dewey, he told the students that they were going to work on a school project called Rock Band. This was the only way Dewey thought he could come out of his rut, create music, and have a chance at his goal of winning WROK's Battle of the Bands at the time. WROK was an FM radio station, and even though it likely stole its name from California's KROQ, or K-Rock, this radio station had some clout, enough to draw big sponsors like Gibson and Pepsi. Dewey really began to see an opportunity as he worked with the kids. He sussed out each student to see what their talents were. He learned that Marta and Alicia could sing, so Dewey put them on backup vocals. Before the first rock band class, or practice, Dewey declares that he is the lead guitarist and vocalist. He's met with resistance from Alicia, but he's quick to tell everyone that he's the captain of this band. Dewey's selfishness as a musician was already seeping into this new collaborative environment, so much so that he has everyone do the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the band of Mr. Schneebly, and will not fight him for creative control, and will defer to him on all issues related to the musical direction of the band.
His insecurity about having creative control and his insecurity of his old band abandoning him is evident despite the fact that these are 10-year-old students who have to listen to what the teacher says. Once Dewey has everyone on board with the roles, he has a discussion with the kids about what kind of band they want to be. The kids say they're into Christina Aguilera, Puff Daddy, and Liza Minnelli, none of which are the direction that Dewey wants to go in. He realizes that no one in his class has even heard of Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page, or Robert Plant, and it prompts him to pivot from band practice to a history lesson. From 8:15 to 10, Dewey is going to teach rock history, and from 10 to 11, rock appreciation. As the host of a show called Band History, I can confidently say that Dewey is one of the greatest rock historians of all time. He assumes everyone has the same knowledge that he has about the history of rock, and if they don't, he'll teach them about how every facet of rock and roll is connected, crafting an unofficial chart that connects all genres to rock. Dewey knew all of this information off the top of the dome, and to Dewey, it's so important that kids grow up with this knowledge so that they too can follow the path of nonconformity in their potential music careers, much like all of the bands and musicians listed on the board, but more importantly, he wants them on the same page so that they can become the band that Dewey wants them to be. He assigns homework in the form of albums that he wants them to listen to. He gives Marta a Blondie CD. He gives Freddie Rush 2112 and teaches him about the legendary drummer Neil Peart. Zach gets Jimi Hendrix Axis Bold as Love, and he tells Lawrence to listen to the keyboard solo in Roundabout by Yes. It's important for Dewey's students to focus on the musicians who came before them. But can this teacher and group of students actually make quality music together? In one of their first sessions together, Zach prompts Dewey to share what kind of music they're going to work on. It's a great question, because Dewey at this point hasn't shared anything that he's actually written himself. He wasn't planning on unveiling a song that he claims that he'd written in 15 minutes. But because he is a bit of a musical genius, Dewey was able to share his vision for the song and sang the following lyrics a cappella.
You think you can kick me out of the band? Well, it's just one problem there. The band is mine! How can you kick me out of what is mine?
And just like that, their first demo, In the End of Time, was born. I will say, it takes guts and vulnerability for Dewey to perform the way he did in front of a class full of kids. I think Dewey understands the importance of art in our society, and he's incredibly passionate about it. What he lacks in tact, he makes up for in passion. We can tell his lyrics come from a very personal place when he sings them for the class. He understands that passion is important on top of technical mastery. Another thing to take away from this early demo is that we really get an insight into how Dewey's creative process works. Dewey had inserted into the demo for the kids how instruments will sound at various parts of the song. He also envisioned how the stage could look in terms of the lighting and the spectacle of it all. We know from this demo that Dewey is very interested in being theatrical and making the show an undeniably mind-blowing experience for the audience. He wants lasers and smoke machines and a psychedelic show. This desire was very likely inspired by 70s rock band performances like Pink Floyd and Kiss, who often added this exact kind of spectacle into their live shows. With their first demo in hand, Dewey and the kids began the process of preparing it for a live debut. But while trying to keep these practices a secret, things would get a little bit dicey. As the band continued to fine-tune In the End of Time, Dewey shared his tips and tricks along the way. And just when things couldn't get any better, one of the students, Tamika, impresses Dewey by beautifully belting out some a cappella lyrics from Aretha Franklin's Chain of Fools, securing her position as an additional singer, and she even receives a homework assignment to listen to Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon so that she can study the vocal solo on The Great Gig in the Sky. In the rock band project's next practice, Dewey begins to teach a lesson about sticking it to the man. As I mentioned earlier, he thinks it's important to subvert the establishment, and for the first time, he acknowledges that he himself is in fact the man as the teacher making the rules. He proceeds to let his bandmates insult him. Dewey doesn't take any of this personally, and in order to do this, I think that he has to really set his ego aside. It's been documented that Dewey witnessed Zac, the lead guitarist, being pushed around and pressured by his father outside of Horace Green Prep, and that's what led him to this next demo. He riffs on what makes his bandmates mad: allowance, chores, bullies. The lyrics that resulted are as follows.
I didn't get no allowance today, so now I'm really ticked off. I had to do my chores today, so I am really ticked off. Step out! Step out! Step out!
I think this is a great step for Dewey, because for the first time, they really collaborate as a band together to create a demo. I also think it's at this point where he starts to see that he can actually have an impact on the students with what he knows. You might say it's a sign that Dewey Finn is beginning to be a good teacher. The next demo was directly inspired by the band's official name for the Battle of the Bands. A few names had been thrown around: the Bumblebees, Koala Bears, and Pig Rectum, to name a few, but ultimately they landed on School of Rock when some of the crew created a shirt with the name. This inspired Dewey to sing a line of a demo on the spot, the lyrics being,
"And we shall teach rock and roll to the world. There's no way you can stop the School of Rock."
The name was emblematic of the education theme that could be seen in many areas of the band. For example, it was eventually decided that the perfect wardrobe for them would be their school uniform, and Dewey uses education as a guise to get away with the idea of a field trip in front of the school principal.
Would it be educational?
Would it be educational? It could be very educational.
Another interesting time the class developed some demos is when the Horace Green principal, Principal Mullen, stopped by. Just to remind you, Dewey wasn't supposed to be teaching these kids music, and so it forced him and the band to come up with some reason to have the guitar on the spot, and it inadvertently became another demo with the following lyrics.
And 54 is a 45 more than what is the answer, Marta?
9.
No, it's 8.
No, it's 9.
Yes, I was testing you. It's 9. And that's a magic number.
But not every song was developed by the band this way. Secretly, the lead guitarist, Zac Mooneyham, was writing a new track. When Dewey learns this, he encourages Zac to share it with the class. Zac gets through the first few lines of the first verse before Dewey encourages the rest of the band to grab their instruments and join him to jam it out. Dewey adjusts the lyrics, and Dewey picks out a moment where he'd do a solo while they riff off of a catchy chorus.
And if you wanna be the teacher's pet, baby, you just better forget it. Rock got no reason, rock got no rhyme. You better get me to school on time.
This is what I would consider to be School of Rock's very first single. And what's important is that Dewey wasn't the one who wrote it. Collaboration and chemistry is essential for a successful band, and these elements in the classroom were now flowing nicely. For these reasons, I am awarding Teacher's Pet with the honor of being School of Rock's magnum opus. With some demos under their belt and their first single, they had the ability to perform well in the context of the classroom, but would they be able to execute in front of other people? WROK's Battle of the Bands was going to be School of Rock's first show with an audience, and like I said, WROK's got some clout, so not just anyone can sign up and perform, you have to audition. Tamika gets nervous and doesn't want to sing, and Dewey has to reassure her of her talent and get her to perform. Instead of just wanting to do it for selfish reasons, it's another moment where I think Dewey is actually helping one of the kids and becoming a positive role model. In fact, right after this moment, Freddie disappears, and Dewey panics until he finds him hanging with what Freddie refers to as real rockers. The moment represents Dewey's fear of being walked out on by his own band, but in his protectiveness of Freddie, he ironically becomes a responsible adult for a minute. Dewey actually says that they're not real rockers, they're posers, and that rock ain't about getting loaded and acting like a jerk. He states that one great rock show can change the world. Again, Dewey is talking about being responsible here. Once School of Rock gets their act together and approaches the stage to audition, the Battle of the Band's producer informs everyone that they're overbooked. Dewey's ego returns in full force, and his frustration about not getting what he wants nearly causes the director to call the cops. But thanks to Summer's ingenuity, which involves them pretending to be terminal patients, the Battle of the Band's producer is sympathetic and puts them on the bill. The band doesn't even have to audition. School of Rock is now one step closer to their very first rock show. The group is in a celebratory mood, and it was at this point that Dewey gets a little reckless. He's driving fast with a bunch of little children in the back of a van without seatbelts while screaming Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song. This carelessness is the exact reason it would be a huge problem if the kids' parents found out that the man teaching their kids was not Ned Schneebly. And that is exactly what happens next. Dewey is promptly kicked out of the school. No parent would want this lying, manipulative person to be around their kids again, and who could blame them? They hadn't been on the journey that we've been on with him to this point. We've been witnessing Dewey's transformation from a self-centered jerk to a selfless man who really cares about the kids' growth and education about rock and their ability to subvert the status quo through art. But that's not going to be enough for the rightfully outraged parents. Dewey has reached a new rock bottom, pun still intended, and the kids' world is rocked as well, pun also intended, as they're now left without a teacher. As they process this information themselves in class, Lawrence and Tamika stick up for Dewey. He actually believed in the kids' talents, something that couldn't really be said about their parents. They realize that they've worked too hard. It would be a shame for them not to perform their show, which was that day. So, while the Horace Green parents are busy raging at the principal in her office, the kids sneak off in the bus that had been arranged for their field trip to the Battle of the Bands show. Apparently, nobody informed the driver about this whole fake teacher scandal. Lawrence and Freddie wake Dewey up from his depressive state, and the tables have completely turned. Now they're the ones motivating him. Knowing that everything is on the line with this performance, Dewey makes a surprising suggestion, proposing that they play Zac's song instead of his own.
Really?
Yes! The thing is, you guys, I ain't that good. I'm not, and I can admit it, but you, dude, you're 10 years old, you're already better than me. Your song rocks harder, so let's play it!
If there's any moment that demonstrates that he's no longer clinging to the selfish fame he desperately desired in the beginning with No Vacancy, this is it. By the way, his ex-bandmates are on stage at this exact moment playing their cringy ballad, Heal Me, I'm Heartsick. Dewey leaves it up to the group to decide which song to play. His values have clearly changed, and he's learned what it's like to be a good collaborator. And even though they haven't practiced Zac's song as much, Dewey says,
Hey, we didn't come here to win. We came here to play one great show, and on Zac's song, you guys really rock.
And then he praised the almighty gods of rock.
God of Rock, thank you for this chance to kick ass. We are your humble servants. Please give us the power to blow people's minds with our high voltage rock. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
And with that, the band takes the stage for the first time in front of a sold-out crowd with their teacher's future hanging in the balance. One advantage that the School of Rock has over the other bands is the sheer number of members. For example, one student, Gordon, is their tech guy, and he takes over the screen that had displayed the sponsors for the event. And I've always wondered why they were allowed to do this, because none of the other bands had custom video feeds or even like their own image. It feels like they broke some kind of rule by patching into this, but I guess the important part is the music, and School of Rock kills it in that department. Despite not having practiced Rock Got No Reason very much, the band crushes the gig. Dewey's guitar solo is a brief 15 seconds, which is 19 minutes and 45 seconds less than usual. This shorter solo makes room for Tamika to pop in with a bangin' vocal solo, and if she was nervous at all for this, it doesn't show at all. All of the pieces of the rock band project have come together in harmony. During the bridge, the lights go dark and smoke machines kick in. There are lasers throughout the entire show. It's the spectacle Dewey always wanted, and for the kids, they get a creative platform they've never experienced before. Zac's guitar solo is actually longer than Dewey's and clocks in at around 25 seconds. And right as it's ending, it's at this moment that Dewey decides to stage dive. And does he fall to the ground? No. The audience carries him. The transformation of Dewey's arc is officially complete, and the parents get a chance to see how great their kids are outside of the realm of classical music. It's as if Dewey's unorthodox boundary-pushing ways had to happen in order for everyone to get to this point in the history of this band.
All right, guys, this is it, the moment of truth. The winner of this year's Battle of the Bands competition is No Vacancy!
After the crazy journey to get to this point, Dewey had come up just short, and his anger and disappointment is evident. Freddie reminds Dewey that the Sex Pistols never won anything. Lawrence says, don't let the man get you down. And Zac says, you gotta cheer up, we played a kick-ass show. And this really helps Dewey see things with a bit more perspective. While I don't endorse kids being emotional support for adults, the point here is that Dewey has taught these kids valuable lessons. They recognize what really matters. Despite Battle of the Bands choosing No Vacancy, the audience and parents shout for School of Rock, prompting them to return to the stage for an encore, which I guess they could just do without asking Battle of the Bands first. It really seems like they are not the most gracious guests at this event, but screw it, they're rock stars now. And they play a cover of It's a Long Way to the Top If You Want to Rock and Roll by AC/DC, which I guess they'd been practicing this whole time in secret. I guess we can add this to their discography as a cover.
To a show, stopping on the
The exposure and success of WROK's show was the key factor in changing the hearts of the horror screen parents when it comes to rock and roll. And with their approval, Dewey was able to start an after-school program where he taught Rock 101 and Advanced Rock. And now that everything's out in the open, Dewey doesn't have to pretend to be Ned, and the kids don't have to pretend like they don't play rock and roll. They don't have to hide the drums when the principal comes into the classroom. Zac doesn't have to hide his desire to play electric guitar. The kids and Dewey can fully be themselves. Education has a lot of thematic importance here, and as Dewey said to the other faculty member at Horror Screen Prep,
Those that can't do, teach. And those that can't teach Jim.
Dewey may have ended up proving his own point with that one. Although, as some of you may know, YouTube's horror history teacher is very skilled in both doing and teaching. So what happened between then and now? Well, after Battle of the Bands in 2003, the kids continued to learn music. Lawrence realized he was the bee's knees. Zac's dad accepted Zac's talent as a chill-ass rocker on electric guitar. Dewey continued being a role model for kids, continuing to educate them. And the kids more or less went on living their lives and going to school. They must have maintained a regular music practice, because in 2013, School of Rock had a 10-year reunion performance of Rock Got No Reason in Austin, Texas. Dewey, Zac, Katie, Marta, Alicia, Tamika, Lawrence, and other members got together for this huge show, and in this special performance, Dewey lets Zac take the first guitar solo, and of course it's followed by Tamika's iconic vocal solo. They also played their classic cover of AC/DC, and Dewey peppers in a little bit of Step Off, and at one point throws it over to Gordon the Tech for a vocal solo. Fans were pumped for this rare School of Rock reunion show, as the AC/DC cover currently has over 29 million views on YouTube. But what about No Vacancy? Where did they end up in 2023? No Vacancy didn't seem to sustain a long-term career after they won the Battle of the Bands, despite winning the 20K. My main man Spider gave up music to study law and is currently a district attorney in Tyler County, Texas. As one put it on social media, he's making sure there is no vacancy at the Tyler County Jail. And as another internet user put it, the guy who played Spider in School of Rock is now the district attorney of Tyler County, Texas, and now we're just gonna have to live with this information forever. Dewey Finn will undoubtedly go down as one of the most legendary rock and roll artists in history. In fact, his influence can still be heard in one of the biggest music releases of 2023 by solo artist Bauer, King of the Koopas, titled Peaches, which debuted at number 83 on the Billboard chart last April.
Peaches, 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 peaches. Oh, yeah.
Let me know if you're interested in a band history lesson on Bowser. Stay plugged in by subscribing to Pumpkin Metal for more than just Pumpkin Metal, let the bell toll for notifications, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, mic drop.